Okay, I'd like to provide an overview of the week 5 activities and the things that I'm going to ask you to do over the next 7 days or so. So starting here, what we've got is I'm in the topic 5 folder in the course content area in Blackboard, so you can actually go in and sort of see the way in which the week is structured. So essentially what I've got here is right now you are watching video topic 5 overview. So that's the first item that you see there, and that's the one that you are currently listening to. If you haven't already done so, one of the assumptions that I'm making as you look at this document or as you look at this video is that you've already read the book, the textbook chapter for this particular week. So that's Think chapter 4. So, and what I do, as I've done with all of the other weeks where Think has been the reading for that week, is I've posted the PowerPoint slides that were provided by the textbook publisher for that particular week. So as you can see the handout here of the slides. The other thing that I've done, like I did during our snow day class, is I've actually gone through and recorded a video specific to those slides. Now, in all honesty, I spend more time relating the content of Think to what it is you are going to be doing moving forward than I do talking about Think. So it's sort of a nice little, I guess, tie between what Think is saying you should be doing at this stage and what you are in the process of doing in terms of taking your annotated bibliographies and turning those over into actual text that will be useful to you, or at least some sort of organization that will be useful to you for the purposes of your literature review. Now, the next couple of things that you see in here, two of them are the articles that that you would have picked up last week in class if you were there. So you should have print copies of the Lensico et al. And the Hussein et al. Articles. What I've done is, what I'd like you to do, sorry, is to spend about 20 or 25 minutes going through the Lensico article and read through it first. Pay particular attention to the literature review. And once you've spent 20 or 25 minutes reviewing that, then I want you to look at this video. So the video Lenensko et al. Folks here, because what I'm going to do in that video is I'm going to specifically sort of pick apart the literature review, looking at some of the things that I think are good about it, some of the things that I think are probably still weaknesses of that. And then once you've done those two activities, so once you've read the Lensico article and watched the Lensico video, then I'm going to ask you to read the Hussein et al. Article. Specifically, when you go to this article, you'll note, and again, I want to spend about 20 to 25 minutes on this activity, and I want you to pay particular attention to the literature review. Now, you'll note there isn't a particular section that begins literature review, and that's actually one of the main weaknesses of this article. But you'll notice that the way in which they've constructed the introduction, it is essentially that serves as the literature review. So you'll see here on the bottom of page 267, continuing throughout page 268, and then on to page 269, the first paragraph there. That's essentially their literature review. So what I would like you to do is, once you've spent 20 or 25 minutes going through this article, paying particular attention to that literature review, is when you are back in Blackboard, if you scroll back up and click on the discussions link, it will open up a page that gives you your various discussion forums. And one of the ones you will see here is you will see something called the Week 5 discussion. So if you click on the Week 5 discussion, what I would like you to do, there are no items in here right now. What I would like you to do is I would like you to pick out either one strength of the literature review from the Hussein et al. Article, or one weakness of the literature review. So one or the other. One thing that you thought they did particularly well, or one thing that you thought that they didn't do well. And I want you to be specific in this, because the idea is that over the course of the week and between the 15 or 16 of us that we've got here in the class, that what's going to happen is essentially we're all going to be picking up on different things that they did well and different things that they didn't do so well. And while many of them that folks identify will be things that you likely may have identified on your own, there will be things that folks will mention that didn't, that you weren't, that you didn't notice or that didn't draw your attention initially. So there's, essentially using our sort of collective heads, we'll be able to get a really good sense of picking apart this article in a very, or at least the literature review of this article, in a very thorough way. There's a couple of other things that you'll find in your Topic 5 folder. Here at the bottom, you'll see a video that's entitled Writing Your Literature Review Using an Integrative Approach. And what I do in this video is I actually go into the Digital Commons that has all of our 6-year theses available, and I pick I think it's 2 or 3 students where I go through and I start to illustrate how they are using the literature or themes in the literature to drive their literature review, and how they are taking those themes and then using the individual pieces of literature as evidence that those themes exist. So that integrative approach to writing the literature review that I talk about is so important. The reason I include that particular video in this week, because it kind of thematically relates a little bit to next week. As you've been working on your annotated bibliography, and as we talked about last week, one of the things that I asked you to begin to do at this stage was to essentially start to organize your literature. To put them into different categories, or to, start to use keywords for them, a variety of different ways in which you can essentially put, here are the 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 articles that I'm going to put in this bucket because they all deal with this particular thing. Because what I'm going to ask that you do when we come to our week 6 class, so for those of you in the Monday class, that's going to be February 29th, Monday, February 29th. For those of you in the Wednesday class, that's going to be Wednesday, March the 2nd. As you come to that class, I'm going to ask that you bring with you 2 things. The first thing I'm going to ask that you bring with you is copies of the articles for one of these topics or categories or themes or keywords or buckets. Now, I don't necessarily mean physical copies. So if you've been essentially doing this all electronically, where you've got all of these saved to a folder on your computer, that's fine. Bring your computer with you, bring the electronic copies with you, just have them in a folder that's, by that keyword or by that topic or by that theme, by that bucket, and that way they're easily identifiable. If you have been printing them out and you've been using the print copies, bring the print copies for those articles that are related to that one topic. The second thing that I would like you to bring to class is I want you to start to construct essentially a topic sentence for that group of articles. So you've put all those articles together because they have something to do with each other. They all talk about some particular aspect. What I want you to do is to essentially have written out, so not just in your head, so that you're not, sort of talking this through off the top of your head, because when we do that, we often don't say a single sentence. You would describe, what all of these articles are talking about in 5 or 6 sentences. What I want you to do is have a single sentence written down, either on paper or written in your computer, that you can read to the group of 4 that you've got, or 3 other folks at your table. And then you can start to talk about how all of these articles relate to that particular theme or that topic sentence, that thematic sentence that you've constructed. Because one of the things we will do during that week 6 class is we're actually going to start to look at how do we start to put this together. How do we start to begin writing that literature review? And this is the activity that we're going to undertake for that purpose. The last thing that you see here in your Topic 5 folder is this resource from the University of Missouri at Kansas City. So if you click on that, essentially it's a short 3-page handout And some of this is stuff you've already done. So in all honesty, everything that's on the first page is stuff that you've already done. So they're looking at the idea of critical reviews and literature reviews. Now, the one we're more interested in is the literature review side. So the whole first page talks about essentially finding and then evaluating the literature that you have. So, which essentially is what we've been doing for the past 5 weeks up until this stage. The second page, it talks about writing a critical review. So this actually is the kind of thing that you did for your journal article reviews. Now you did it in a very structured way that I asked you to, hit these main points and stuff like that. This particular resource just talks about how to, critique an article or a book or a piece of literature in general, which is somewhat useful. So I would skim through this, because one of the things that we will talk about during our week 6 class is this idea of how to critique the literature as opposed to summarizing the literature. The thing about this one that I think is the most important is this third page here, where they talk about writing a literature review, because this is basically how do you change that critical review to more of a thematic kind of thing. So you're not talking about individual pieces of literature, you're talking about themes in the literature and using the literature as an example of or evidence of that particular theme. So these 3 paragraphs here as well, you'll see they give you a number of resources, some of which we've talked about in class, particularly the PAN book is one that I've mentioned in class a couple of times. Although note that there are 2 websites there. I'm not sure if they're still active or not, but these are resources to go out and take a look at to see, particularly as we start to transition from this idea of figuring out what our literature says to actually writing the literature review, which is essentially where we are at this stage now. We're transitioning from, understanding all of the literature that we have and what it says to now actually starting to use that literature to write a literature review. So that's all that I have for this particular week. So if you go back, that ends all of the material in the Topic 5 folder. And I will send all this information out as part of an email as well. And I hope to see all of you guys in a week's time.